Okay, so yesterday we started with the concepts of SOQL query, and I have explained what does it means by Salesforce Object Query Language, and why is the name Salesforce Object Query Language. How exactly it is differed between SQ. What is the difference between SQL and SOQL? That is also we have seen. Now let's start with the types of SOQL. Basically, the SOQL queries are divided into two different types. There are two different types of SQL queries. The first one is static query and the second one is dynamic query. So, we will be covering both of them. We will be covering both of them. So, first of all, I'm going to start it. I'm going to start with static SQL queries. Okay. So, let's understand few things related to this and then we will be taking the examples on static queries. So, what is the meaning of SQL, static SQL? The word static means constant. The word static means constant. Something which has been defined and which cannot be changed in the future. You cannot make any alteration. If there is an entity which cannot be altered, if there is an entity which cannot be modified in the future, so that kind of entities are called as static entities. That kind of entities are called as static entities. Your SQL query, the static SQL is actually a kind of query. Whenever we construct this query, then at the end, when we decided how many fields, how many columns, this it should fetch. How many columns data the SQL query should fetch. Once it all has been decided, now you cannot change it. Dynamically at runtime. You cannot change it dynamically at runtime. That's what the thing. So this is something called as static queries. Okay, this is something called as static queries. So how exactly the static queries are written? So Apex have its own format of writing the static SQL queries is the use of square bracket. Okay, this is square bracket. So every static SQL query must be written inside square bracket, opening and closing. Opening bracket and closing bracket. Now, for example, if this is a query, select ID and then name and then rating and then industry from account. If I wanted to execute this query, I must enclose this query within square brackets, within square bracket. So let's understand, few of the examples related to this. Then we will be seeing like what if the query returns one value, what if the query returns multiple values, so how to handle that. If the query returns single value, how could we handle that. If your query returns multiple values and single values, how we could handle this, and then we will start taking these use cases. Okay, so let me bring up you to the developer console and let's open execute anonymous window. Okay, initially I'm not creating a class for this, rather I will be using execute anonymous window. So first two to three examples we will be covering from here, and then we will create a class and a separate method for these, for the use cases that we are going to solve. Now see, if I use, for example, let me go back and open query editor. Open query editor, and for example here, if I write down one of the query, select what, now give the name of the fields, like select the ID comma name and then comma rating, and then industry, and then annual revenue comma active status. Okay, from where? From account. Okay, so I created a query where I wanted to fetch few of the columns, few of the fields, few of the entities from account. What are those columns? I wanted to get the data of ID and then name, rating, industry, annual revenue, and active status from account. Now see what happen if I execute this query. So this is returning me how many records? 36 records. This is returning me how many records? 36 records. That means in the account object altogether there are 36 different records. That's what this query is returning. Now see, let me copy the same query and I open the execute anonymous window. Here I wanted to execute this query. Okay, here I wanted to execute this query. So whenever we wanted to get, write down the query, there are two different forms, static and dynamic. What you have started? Static queries. Every static query, every static query must be enclosed within square bracket. Every static query must be enclosed within what? Square bracket. So I should rather write down the query over here. If I wanted to write down a static query, I should enclose the query. I should write down the query within what? Square brackets. Now see, this query will actually returns me multiple records. We know this. How many records this query? If I execute the same query, this query has returned me from the query editor. I have executed this query. This query will be going to return me 36 records. This query will going to return me 36 records. So I should rather, I should all the 36 record, I should rather create a provision. I should create a provision to handle all those 36 record. But let me do one thing. देखिए एक clause है, limit clause. एक limit clause है जो अभी अभी हम यूज कर लेते हैं इसको, और फिर मैं उसका धीरे से मतलब बताता हूँ. तो आई एम रिस्ट्रिक्टिंग, ऑल्दो अगर मैं लिमिट हटाता हूँ यहाँ पे, तो वी नो दैट दिस क्वेरी विल रिटर्न मी 36 डिफरेंट रिकॉर्ड्स. 36, 38, व्हाटएवर क्या है, 36 है. Okay, so it have 36 different records, right? So if I execute this query, अगर मैं इस तरह से इसको execute करता हूँ, this query is going to give me 36 record. तो मैं यहाँ पर एक clause का use करता हूँ, limit how much? 1. Limit how much? 1. Now I am restricting this query to just give me one record. Just give me one record, one random record. It could be any record. ठीक है, it could be any record. We have not specifically mentioned what record you should pick up. Rather, just give me any one record. So it could be any record from all this. It could be any record from this 36 records. So it's going to give me, it's going to return. This query is going to return what? This query is going to return one account record. One account record. Now see, if I ask you one question, and try to give the answer. If I wanted to store one integer, what should I do? What should I do if I wanted to store an integer value, one integer value? I should define an integer variable. For example, integer num1 equals to this. If I wanted to store one integer value, I should declare a variable of the data type. Data type what? Integer, a primitive data type. If I wanted to store a string value, what should I do? I should define one variable of the type string. That's what I should do. If I wanted to store one integer record, I should define a variable. If I wanted to store one integer record, I should define a variable of the type integer. If I wanted to store one string value, if I wanted to store one string record, what should I do? I should declare a variable of the type string. If I wanted to store one date variable, okay, one date variable, what should I do? I should declare a variable. I should declare a variable of the type date. I should declare a variable of the type date. Okay, I should declare a variable of the type date, whatever, like this. If I wanted to store ID of any of the record, okay, then what should I do? I should declare a variable. Of the type ID. This you understood. If you understood that, then let me go with this. Whenever we wanted to store one integer record, we should declare a variable of the type integer. Whenever we wanted to store one string record, we should declare a variable of the type string. Whenever we wanted to store one date record, we should declare a variable of the type date. Whenever we wanted to store an ID record, we should declare a variable of the type ID. So this actually means, whenever we are storing any value, we should match the value with the data type. So this is an integer this is an integer value, so I'm storing this into the integer variable. This one is a string value. This one is a string value. I'm storing it inside a string variable. This one is a date value. I'm storing it inside a date variable. This one is an ID value. I'm storing it inside an ID variable. I'm storing this inside an ID variable. What now? Now, what this query will return to you? What this query will return to you? One account record. This query will return you one account record. This query will return you one account record. Let me show you that also. This query will return you one account record. If if you put like this limit one, and if you try to execute, see what happens. This query will return you one random account record. I haven't mentioned anywhere in this query, okay, just give me the account whose name is ZXY. That's something system has picked it randomly. That's not the important thing कि यहाँ कौन सा account display हुआ है. Important is कि when you give this query, what this query will give in return to you. This query is returning one account record. So where should that account record we should store? We should also define, we should also define one variable. We should also define one variable. जिसका टाइप क्या रहना चाहिए? इंटीजर नहीं, स्ट्रिंग नहीं, इसका टाइप रहना चाहिए ऑब्जेक्ट. ऑब्जेक्ट ऑफ व्हाट? अकाउंट. ACC equals to this, like this. Now tell me what I have done. I told you there are two types of data types Salesforce में, primitive and as object. Primitive itself have the object data type. Primitive के अंदर ही होता है, as object पे गया ही नहीं मैं अभी तक. Primitive के अंदर ही होता है object is also one of the data type. प्रिमिटिव के अंदर ही होता है. आओ, डेटा टाइप्स क्या होते हैं? दो होते हैं, प्रिमिटिव और एस ऑब्जेक्ट. प्रिमिटिव में आते हैं आपके बूलियंस, स्ट्रिंग्स, आईडी, डेट टाइम इंटीजर, और लॉन्ग डेसिमल, डबल, बाइनरी लॉग, उसी के अंदर आता है ऑब्जेक्ट. जैसे अकाउंट वेरिएबल, तो दिस वेरिएबल का डेटा टाइप क्या बनेगा? अकाउंट. कॉन्टैक्ट वेरिएबल, तो दिस बिकम्स व्हाट? अ वेरिएबल ऑफ द कॉन्टैक्ट. जैसे इंटीजर वेरिएबल है, लॉन्ग वेरिएबल है, डबल वेरिएबल है, वैसे ही आप यू कुड डिफाइन द वेरिएबल विद द ऑब्जेक्ट नेम. दिस वेरिएबल बिकम्स द वेरिएबल ऑफ दिस ऑब्जेक्ट. नाउ दिस वेरिएबल वन इज केपेबल टू स्टोर वन अकाउंट रिकॉर्ड. एवरी सी इंटीजर वेरिएबल वन, ये दिस इफ आई आस्क यू कि ये क्या स्टोर कर सकता है, यू विल टेल मी कि सर इट कुड स्टोर वन इंटीजर वैल्यू, बिकॉज वेरिएबल ऑलवेज स्टोर वन. एक से ज्यादा वैल्यूज अगर स्टोर करनी है तो क्या होता है, आप इधर यू गो विद द अरेज, और या फिर अभी आपने रिसेंटली खत्म किया कलेक्शन, वो किस लिए होता है? एक से ज्यादा वैल्यू स्टोर करने के लिए. लेकिन अगर एक वैल्यू स्टोर करना है, एक वैल्यू, एक रिकॉर्ड, देन ऑलवेज डिफाइन वेरिएबल. एक इंटीजर स्टोर करना है तो इंटीजर वेरिएबल वन. एक स्ट्रिंग स्टोर करना है तो स्ट्रिंग जो अभी मैं दिखाया, और एक अकाउंट रिकॉर्ड स्टोर करना है तो अकाउंट वेरिएबल वन, कॉन्टैक्ट वेरिएबल वन, कैंपेन वेरिएबल वन, स्ट्रिंग वेरिएबल वन, ओ सॉरी, योर हायरिंग मैनेजर वेरिएबल वन, पोजीशन वेरिएबल वन, लाइक दिस. तो दिस वी ऑलरेडी हैव स्टडीड. अभी मुझे पता नहीं कि आप लोग को याद है या नहीं, इसीलिए रिवाइज करना इस वक्त जरूरी था. So that's the important thing, that's the important thing. So what I'm doing guys, first of all मैंने क्वेरी को रिस्ट्रिक्ट किया. ठीक है, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल आई रिस्ट्रिक्टेड अ क्वेरी. देखो अगर मैं ऐसा दूंगा, ठीक है, अगर मैं ऐसा दूंगा, दिस क्वेरी विल रिटर्न मी, यू नो this query will return me multiple records, but I wanted to fire a query if query returns only one record. If query returns only one record, then how we are going to handle this? First of all, how to restrict the query to return only one record? So that for that you need to insert a clause called as limit. If you give limit one, it will going to give you only one record. If you get limit equals to two, if you give limit equals to two, see what happens. Obviously, very obviously, what happens? It's going to return me two records. If you give limit equals to three, it's going to give me three record. If you give without limit, there is no limit, it's going to return me all of the records, all record that are there into the object. That are there into the object. This is what going to be happen. This is what going to be happen. So I wanted to restrict the query that it should return me only one record. I wanted to, first of all, I wanted to restrict this query that it should return me only one record. And that's why I inserted a clause called as limit clause. So what does limit do? Limit will actually do, limit will restrict the now count of the record that a query should return. So here I am giving limit equals to 1. So now I am for sure, I am very much sure that this query will now return me only one record of the type account. तो अगर देखो क्वेरी, अगर इफ यू वांटेड टू स्टोर इंटीजर वैल्यू तो आपको इंटीजर वेरिएबल डिफाइन करना है, इफ यू वांटेड टू स्टोर स्ट्रिंग वैल्यू तो आपको स्ट्रिंग वेरिएबल डिफाइन करना है. Here you wanted to store account value, and that's why I'm defining one variable of the type data type account. ठीक है, and let's see what happened after this. So I'm printing this result, printing the result of query जो रिटर्न करता है उसको प्रिंट कर रहा हूं. So system.debug, what I wanted to print, ठीक है, what I wanted to print, I wanted to print this whole values, I wanted to print this whole values. ठीक है, so for example account id equals to plus what, acc. ठीक है, acc, always take this, oh, acc dot id. ठीक है, so this will, see this complete record is going to be stored inside this object. अब इस object के reference है ना, आपको पूरा print करना है. system dot debug, ठीक है. The next is what, name. So it's what, name, account name equals to this, and then system dot debug. The next is rating, so acc dot rating. ठीक है, rating. ठीक है, and then system dot debug. The next value what we have fetched, query में क्या fetch किया हमने, industry. So I'll be fetching this, industry. Here also the same thing, industry. And then system dot debug. The next value what we have fetched, annual revenue. Here also annual revenue. Next what we have fetched, active status, active underscore c. ठीक है, active status. Okay, see, so I will be displaying all this value, but मैं अभी जैसे एक best practices के तौर पे एक बात बता रहा हूँ. When what we have done, we fire a query. ठीक है, we fire a query जिसमें हमने बोला कि ID और नेम और रेटिंग, इंडस्ट्री, एनुअल रेवेन्यू, एक्टिव स्टेटस, ये सारी फील्ड्स का रिकॉर्ड आप मुझे दीजिए. कौन सी ऑब्जेक्ट से, अकाउंट ऑब्जेक्ट से. अच्छा, सारे रिकॉर्ड्स मत दीजिए आप, ठीक है, डोंट गिव मी ऑल रिकॉर्ड्स, रादर जस्ट गिव मी एनी वन रैंडम रिकॉर्ड. एक रिकॉर्ड दीजिए आप मुझको, कोई भी एक रैंडम रिकॉर्ड जिसमें ये फील्ड्स का डेटा मैंने देखना है. तो अब ये जो डेटा है ये हमने कहाँ स्टोर किया, एक वेरिएबल में, जिसका डेटा टाइप क्वेरी जिसमें आपने फायर करी है उसी के डेटा टाइप से मैच होना चाहिए. ठीक है, तो अकाउंट है इसलिए मैंने अकाउंट कर लिया. अब अगर क्वेरी आपको रिटर्न कर रहा है डेटा, ठीक है, अगर क्वेरी आपको रिटर्न कर रहा है तो एसीसी में वह रिकॉर्ड रहेगा. अगर ये क्वेरी ने कुछ भी रिटर्न नहीं किया बाय द वे, तो आपका एसीसी का वैल्यू रहेगा नल. अगर एसीसी नल है तो आपका ये जितना भी सिस्टम डॉट डीबग स्टेटमेंट है ये किसी काम का नहीं. इसीलिए एज अ बेस्ट प्रैक्टिस एक चीज ध्यान से सुनो कि जब भी हम इसके बाद जब भी हम क्वेरी फायर करेंगे, and then we will be taking a variable to store the result of query. For example, here what we have defined, we define a variable called ACC of the data type account. Now this variable ACC is storing this record, है ना, जो क्वेरी का आउटपुट है, क्वेरी जब फायर होगी उसका जो रिजल्ट आएगा, दिस वेरिएबल ACC is going to store that variable. तो before actually printing this, before doing anything to the record what is there, हम लोग हमेशा एज अ बेस्ट प्रैक्टिस वी विल बी डूइंग वन थिंग, हर बार एक चीज करेंगे, और वो ये है कि वी विल चेक वेदर ACC is not equals to null, whether ACC is not equals to null. If ACC is not equals to null, है ना, if ACC is not equals to null, if ACC is not equals to null, If ACC is not equals to null, अगर ACC की वैल्यू null नहीं है, then only we will doing whatever we wanted to do with the result. Okay, that's what the thing. That's what the thing. So as in best practice, we will always check for this condition. ये जो ACC है जिसमें रिजल्ट आया है इस क्वेरी का, तो अगर क्वेरी बराबर फायर हुई है तो इसमें रिजल्ट है, इसमें वैल्यू है. अगर इसमें वैल्यू है तो इट इज नॉट इक्वल टू नल. अगर ये नल नहीं है तो डू वॉट एवर यू वॉन्टेड टू डू. But if it is null, then don't do this. That's what the thing. So as a best practice of programming, we will be always checking after firing a query. After firing a query, we will be checking for the result, whether there is a result into the variable or not, whether the variable is not empty or not. Okay. So once now this has been done, let me execute this. So the request has been sent to the server and now we also have received the response. Okay. Okay. What is the response? चलो पहले output देख लो आप. This is what it has fetched this record with the ID, with the name, rating, industry, annual revenue, and the active status. This is the record. I mean, the query has fetched. Now let me show you something. Okay, let's go to this. How many number of SOQL queries have been fired? 1 out of 100. Yesterday we have discussed this. In a single transaction, you could maximum execute 100 SQL queries. One query if it is executed, how much record a query can fetch? One query could fetch maximum 50,000 records. How many we have fetched? Only one record. We have fetched only one record. देखो ना, एक ही तो record fetch हो क्या आया, because आपने limit clause use किया है. ठीक है, although आपकी query ने एक ही record दिया, लेकिन एक query से, with a single query you could maximum fetch 50,000 records. How many SOSL, Salesforce Object Search Language query? This is something we are going to learn. This is also something which is a second type of query. SOQL, Salesforce Object Query Language, Salesforce Object Search Language. How many SOSL queries in a single transaction? You could fire 20. Okay, you could maximum fire 20. How many DML statements we can use in a program? 150. Using a DML statement, how much data we could fetch? 10,000 data. Okay, what is the maximum heap size? Yesterday we have discussed something called as 60 lakh characters, 6 MB. कुछ याद आ रहा है, कल बताया था मैंने. That's what the thing. तो ये जितना भी यहाँ दिख रहा है ना तुमको, यहाँ से लेके यहाँ तक है, whatever you are seeing it right now, that's really important. और ये इसके पहले मैंने शायद तुमको पेस्ट करके दिया है ग्रुप में, है ना. तो learn everything. This is every entity over here is the governor limit. This is the governor limit of SQL. You could maximum fire 100 SQLs. You could maximum fire 150 DML statements. You could maximum fire 20 SOSL queries. Using one SOQL query, you could fetch 50,000 required. Using one DML statement, you could fetch 10,000 record. You could not write down more than 60 lakhs of characters, not more than that. Okay, these are some of the governor limits. Okay, ये याद करो. Okay, so we learn how to fire a query. Okay, let me do one more thing. I'll do in the same program. So this was one of the standard object. This was the standard object. Let me design a query related to a custom object. This is just for the partition. Okay, this is just for the partition. Now let me try to print a record of any custom object. For example, let's go with the hiring manager में बहुत सारे records हैं. Let's go with any of the records. Position पे जाते हैं. So first of all, I should know the name of object. That's why I'm going over here and I'm copying the actual API name of the object. I'm copying the name of the object. Okay. And one more thing here I would like to see is how many fields are there. तो एक तरीका ये भी है आपका. एक तरीका ये है कि आप यहाँ से क्वेरी टाइप करके बनाएं. दूसरा कल जो मैंने आपको बताया, ठीक है, अगर आपको पोजीशन ऑब्जेक्ट पे क्वेरी बनानी है तो यू कुड गो विथ व्हाट. लेट्स ओपन दिस. ओपन व्हाट पोजीशन, POSI पोजीशन. ओपन द ऑब्जेक्ट. ओके, पोजीशन ऑब्जेक्ट. ठीक है, यहाँ पे सिलेक्ट करो आपको कौन कौन सी फील्ड चाहिए. आई वांटेड टू सी द ID and the name. I have also wanted to see the location, then number of the vacancy, position status. ठीक है, ओपन डेट, माइलस्टोन डेट, मिनिमम बजट, मैक्सिमम बजट. ठीक है, I wanted to see contact number, HR email ID, travel required, description, skills. ठीक है, this this whole data I wanted to see, so I'm just I mean selecting this and pressing this query button to see a query has been ready. Query बन के तैयार है आपकी. ठीक है, query बन के तैयार है. So let me just copy this query from here. Let me just copy this query from here. You know what happens if I execute this? This is going to give me the result. How many results? There are altogether 15 data, 15 records are there. So I'll introduce a limit clause. Let me first of all copy this query. तो मैंने कहा ना आपको query भी type नहीं करनी पड़ती. This is what the thing. ठीक है, this is what the thing. तो ये हमने query बनाई है. क्वेरी बनाई है तो क्वेरी मस्ट ऑलवेज बी एनक्लोज्ड. ठीक है, वन सेकेंड. क्वेरी मस्ट ऑलवेज बी एनक्लोज्ड विद इन दिस, विद इन व्हाट, स्क्वायर ब्रैकेट. ठीक है, विद इन स्क्वायर ब्रैकेट. मोर ओवर, ये जो क्वेरी आप बना रहे हो, ये जो क्वेरी आपने बनाई है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल दिस इज योर क्वेरी, दिस क्वेरी is fired on which object, position object. तो it's going to return me the record from position object. ठीक है, यहां पर मैं इसको लिमिट करता हूं. I am restricting this to just give me one record. I'm restricting this to just give me one record. ठीक है, तो पहले मैं ऐसे देखता हूँ उसको कि वेदर ये ऐसा स्प्लिट करके चलता है कि नहीं चलता है. क्लासेस में तो चल जाता है. Here I don't know whether Salesforce will allow to do this or not. Probably it's going to give the error. Okay, so I'm just trying with this. Otherwise उसको एक लाइन पे ही ला लूंगा मैं. ठीक है, तो मैंने क्वेरी फायर किया जिसमें मैं नेम, लोकेशन, नंबर ऑफ वैकेंसीज, पोजीशन, स्टेटस, है ना, ये सारी चीजें मांग रहा हूँ. ठीक है, ये सारी चीजें मांग रहा हूँ. एंड देन I've limited this query, and इस query को लिमिट किया वन के ऊपर. सो इट्स गोइंग टू गिव मी वन रिकॉर्ड ऑफ व्हाट, पोजीशन ऑब्जेक्ट. इसीलिए यहाँ पर मैं एक वेरिएबल डिफाइन करता हूँ जिसका टाइप रहेगा पोजीशन, लाइक दिस, अ वेरिएबल ऑफ द पोजीशन. तो पोजीशन ऑब्जेक्ट जो है आपकी कस्टम ऑब्जेक्ट है. जैसे हायरिंग मैन, अकाउंट का नाम सिर्फ अकाउंट है, लेकिन पोजीशन का नाम सिर्फ पोजीशन थोड़ी ना है. पोजीशन का नाम है पोजीशन अंडरस्कोर अंडरस्कोर सी, एक वेरिएबल नेम पोस्ट जिसके अंदर ये सारी क्वेरी है. तो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल लेट मी ट्राई टू एक्सिक्यूट दिस एंड सी व्हाट हैपेंस. system.debug. One second, this one is an important call. सो हियर आई एम एक्चुअली ट्राइंग, मैं ये पूरा रिजल्ट ऐसे सिस्टमैटिकली प्रिंट करता हूँ, बट फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल लेट मी ट्राई कि जैसे मैंने इसको मल्टीपल लाइन पे स्प्लिट किया है, सो वेदर सेल्सफोर्स अलाउ मी टू डू दिस और नॉट, बिकॉज डेवलपर कंसोल पे होता है ये. अच्छा, यहाँ भी होता है. ओके, दैट्स अ गुड थिंग. Okay, what happened? Once again, try to execute this query. Let's see what happens. One second, guys. Okay, it's executing. One second. ओके, ठीक है, अब रिजल्ट तो आ रहा है आपका. सो मैं थोड़ा सिस्टमैटिकली पहले उसको अरेंज कर देता हूँ. मतलब इंस्टेड ऑफ प्रिंटिंग इट लाइक दिस, ऐसा प्रिंट करने के बजाय इसको सिस्टमैटिकली प्रिंट करते हैं. सो सिस्टम डॉट डीबग, लेट मी गो विद दिस, पोजीशन आईडी इक्वल्स टू POS dot ID. ठीक है, now let me copy this statement, and then the next entity what we have fetched is the name. Position name equals to POS dot name. Here it should be dot. Okay, how many entities we have? Location, name, number of the vacancies, 1 2 3 4 5 6. So let me first of all check it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 15 entities. Okay. So I'll be copying and pasting this 15 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. Okay. Now, the first thing is name. The second is location. So I'll just copy and paste it over here. Okay. The second is location. POS dot location. The third one is number of vacancies. Number of vacancies. So number of vacancies. POS dot number of vacancies. The third entity is position status. Position status. Here I'm pasting it. I'm also pasting it over here. Position status. The next entity is like open date. So just copy, paste it over here, and paste it over here also. If see, you observe, if I do any mistake, please let me know. If I did any mistake over here, you guys please keep a close watch on this. If I make any mistake, please let me know. Copy milestone date. Milestone date is the next entity. Okay. Milestone date is the next entity. The next is minimum budget field. So I'll be printing POS dot minimum budget. Here also minimum budget. Minimum budget. Something like this. And then maximum budget. The next field is POS dot maximum budget. Here also it should be maximum budget. Guys, please keep a watch. Probably I could commit any mistake. If I commit any mistake, please let me know. The next one is HR emails ID. You know, HR email ID we have also fetched. So I'm just printing it over here and HR email ID. Just removing HR email ID like this. The next one is contact number. After HR email ID is contact number. Here also it's like contact number. But here it should be in a plain English format. So contact number. The next entity is travel required. So POS dot travel required. Here also travel required. And like this. The next entity is passport required. So let me copy and paste it over here. Passport required. Here also it should be like passport required. Okay. Passport required. And the next is position description. So I'm copying and pasting it over here also. Position description. Like this. The last one is skill requires. Skills required and copy and paste. Okay. 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 So and after this one more system.debug. I'll be copying it over here and I'll be pasting it somewhere around this. Fine. So guys, what I did, यहाँ पे मैंने दो queries बनाई हैं. I created two queries. But in both of the cases, the query will return only one record. In both of the cases, the query is going to return you only one record. Why? Because in the query, you have inserted a clause called as limit clause. Okay? You could fetch any number of the fields, particularly from any object. For example, from the account, I restricted this to these only 5 to 4 fields. But in the position, I selected all the fields. So never, I suggest you, whenever you wanted to type a query, please don't go and type, just straightforward go and type. Rather, you should make the use of query editor. And you personally have been feel how easy it is to construct the queries from the query editor. How easy it is to construct the query from the query editor. Now, once you know the query, once you have the query, just copy and paste it wherever you wanted to paste it. तो यहाँ पे आप directly नहीं दे सकते. Every static query must always be enclosed within the square bracket. So I inserted a square bracket and then at the end semicolon. I restricted this query to return me only one record, because right now what we are learning, if the query returning one record, how should we handle this? How could we handle this? So we should first of all declare a variable of that type. If the query is returning account record, you should declare a variable of the type account. If the query is returning position record, you should declare a variable of the type position. If the query is returning you Campaign record, you should declare a variable of the data type campaign. If the query is returning you one hiring manager record, you should declare a variable of the data type hiring manager. That's what you should do. That's what we have seen. Now let me execute and see the result. So let's go to the developer console. I'm minimizing this. Okay. Now see here, how many SQL queries we have fired? 2 SQL queries. See, count of SQL is 2. Out of what? 100. How much data we have been fetched? Only 2. How many we could fetch? 50,000. Out of 50,000, we have fetched only 2 records. Let's see the output. Let's see the output. The first one is your account record. Okay, all these details, and the second one is your position record. Second one is your position record. Okay, so that's how we fetch. That's how we fetch the data of the object with the help of SQL query. What you learned today? If the query returns only one record. By tomorrow, we will be learning what about the if query returns multiple records, how we are going to handle that. Obviously, we are going to make the use of collection. That's what we are going to start by tomorrow. Please have a practice on this. Please have a practice on this. We are going step by step. We are actually I am taking baby steps, because I know development actually requires you to practice. That's why I'm not in a hurry to complete the topics. That's the reason I'm taking only one topic. We are taking a baby steps to learn this development part. अगर आप इतना भी नहीं करोगे तो दिक्कत जाएगी आपको. It's almost like कि one topic, two topic, two तो होता ही नहीं है. I used to take only one topic in a day. That's the reason I'm expecting कि by today itself you are going to practice on this. So that by tomorrow I could tell you कि what happens if query returns multiple record. If I remove this and if I fire the query, तो यहाँ तो मुझे error आ जाएगा, because this query will intended to return 36 record, 38 record of the type account, and we just have declared one variable. So one variable is not sufficient to store all 38 record. Obviously, we should have some other provisions in that case. So what is that provision? What happens when the query returns multiple record, that we are going to see it by tomorrow. Today, please have a practice on this, and please don't type the queries. Rather, make the use of your query editors. Okay? Please use this tool. This is an excellent tool. There's no chances that you could commit any mistake in formation of the query. So that's a very excellent tool. So please have a practice on this. Even yesterday also I told you, okay, for this whole, please have a practice. Please get yourself to complete all this SQL with the query editor. So those who have done, it's a good thing. Those who have not done, start it from here. Okay, chaliye. So let me first of all start.